This is the month 4 update on my first planted tank, and now that I have several other planted tanks, I'm definitely starting to see mistakes that I've made with this tank, but it's all part of the learning process moving forward. So starting off with the plants, and for the most part the plants have been grown really well with minimal issues, and it's easy to see the month on month plant growth now. One potential problem is what I thought was hair algae in last month's update is actually blackbeard algae on the Bolbitis. Unfortunately, this does seem to be spreading to other places in the tank too, and I've seen it growing on the Java moss on the driftwood. I am trying to counter this by restricting the photo period from the lighting unit for the tank, because all of the other plants in this tank are low light plants anyway, so restricting the amount of light that the algae is getting should be able to help. I decided to remove the Amazon frogbit from this tank this month because compared to something like Salvinia, it does need a lot of maintenance, and that was my plan. I was going to switch the Amazon frogbit out for Salvinia. Unfortunately though, these little plants are proving difficult. I'm not sure if these are little baby frogbits or if duckweeds managed to get into the tank somehow, but these are replicating at a rapid pace and it's a pain to take them out. So for now I'm just going to leave these tiny little floating plants in there. The Java moss growth has really picked up in this tank over this last month or two, and it's dominating the main piece of driftwood in the tank, and my cherry shrimp seem to be loving it. The Java Fern, Bolbitis, Bucephalandra and Anubias all seem to be growing at a steady but slow speed, but visible growth is starting to become more noticeable on all of the epiphytes in this tank now. The nutritional problem that I had a few months back where holes were starting to form in some of the plant's leaves seems to have stopped since I started to dose the tank with tropical liquid fertilizer as well. There's plenty of new growth on the Anubias that melted all the way back in month 1, and it does seem to have made a full recovery and just be focusing on new fresh growth for now. A small piece of Java moss has taken hold on this smaller driftwood near the Anubias, but I am curious how this ends up growing out over the coming months. The tiny piece of Java moss that I found on the side of the main piece of driftwood in this tank is definitely starting to grow out now, and I'm curious as how big this can get as well. Moving on to the fish in the tank, and the 2 new baby Corydoras seems to have settled into their new home without issue. The 3 adult Corys have accepted them into their group, and they go about their business of looking for food and relaxing day in, day out without any aggression or anything like that. I would guess that both of the baby Corys have already doubled in size since I picked them up a few months back, so it won't be long until they're roughly the same size as the adults. One thing that I did notice this month is that the Corydoras that had tumours a few months back seems to have got better. I can't see any tumours on any of the Corydoras now, and these seem to have cleared up all by themselves because I haven't been actively dosing meds in this tank or anything like that. The chili rasboras in the tank are finally starting to get their distinct red colour, and I'm taking that as a good sign, as it's taken me months to be able to get them calm and relaxed in the tank to develop their red coloration. They basically just school around the tank in their own little group and ignore everything else unless there's food on the go, and then they start to get amongst it and get as much of the food as they can before the tetras eat it all. I have been paying a lot more attention to my neon tetras in this tank since I lost one last month due to a curved spine issue, but from what I can see all of the remaining neon tetras are fine, so I'm guessing it was just a one-off with that particular fish. The neon tetras do chase each other around the tank from time to time, but other than that they just keep to themselves and pretty much don't come out of their little hiding spots or swimming areas unless there's food on the go. My remaining honey gourami spends most of its time hiding and sticking its little head out to see if there's any food available. He definitely does seem to prefer the thicker leaves of the Java Fern latifolia at the back of the tank, with that being his primary hiding spot, but he does hide around the driftwood a lot too. His behaviour has definitely changed since his brother jumped out of the tank last month, so I do think that honey gourami are more of a social fish than a solitary fish, but I am worried that if I get another honey gourami that he's not used to, they might start to be aggressive, so that is something that I'm thinking of doing in the coming months. Moving on to the inverts in the tank, and I added 2 new Ormano shrimp this month, and the hope was that they'd help deal with the blackbeard algae when I first noticed it developing and it was really small, but unfortunately that really hasn't happened. The 2 new Ormano shrimp do seem to have just settled into the new tank right away, and they basically just spend all day looking for food and chilling out. They don't really do anything else. I actually managed to capture this clip of all 4 of the Ormano shrimp in this tank together, and that might not sound like much, but it's been a pain just to capture the original 2 in the same clip, never mind all 4. The red cherry shrimp in the tank really have been breeding, and I managed to count over 100 cherry shrimp a few days back before their movement just made it difficult to make sure I wasn't recounting the same shrimp. The cherry shrimp spend the majority of their time on the Java moss grown on the back of the main piece of driftwood, but some of them have started to venture out into other parts of the tank more frequently, and I am seeing them in other areas. I actually removed 23 of the red cherry shrimp from this tank this month and moved them over to my 40-gallon guppy tank. The majority of these are all self-bred in this 29-gallon tank, and it's actually saved me between £36 and £92 depending on where I would have bought the red cherry shrimp for the 40-gallon tank, so it's a quick and easy way to save money on the new tank build. The population of the pest snails in this tank seems to be tracking sideways right now, and I'm not sure why, because a few months ago it was growing at a rapid pace. I would hazard a guess that it's something to do with the food supply because of the boom in the cherry shrimp population. They are eating everything they can find right now. Moving on to the hardscape, and my main worry with this tank right now is this massive piece of driftwood that I've got as the central feature for the tank. It's mangrove wood, and it constantly sheds these small wood particles into the water column, and it seems to be getting worse. I spent some time googling it, and it appears that this is a common problem with mangrove wood, and it's largely unavoidable, so you get these water particles in your water column if you have this wood in your tank. The filter that I have on the tank is doing a decent job of collecting these water particles and trying to keep them out of the main water column, but the amount of maintenance that I'm doing is increasing because of it. A few months back I was doing internal maintenance on this filter once a month without issue, but now I'm doing it once a week or the filter pads do clog up. During maintenance I squeeze the coarse and medium foam pads out into water to free them up of all the debris, and I totally replace the fine filter pad in there, but within a week it's all clogged up again. My main worry is if it's doing this to the filter pads, what's it doing to the gills of my fish, so that's why I'm looking to rescape this tank within the foreseeable future. I've actually been doing water changes in this tank this month just to try and remove as many of these floating wood particles as possible to try and reduce the number of them able to get into my fish gills. Moving on to water parameters, and the water parameters in the tank have been stable for around 2 months now. I check the ammonia, nitrite and nitrate twice per week and there's very little movement.